love to hang out with people
Yeah,
smarter than
totally,
us. That's
totally.
what we do. That's
Exactly.
how we roll. But we love him, and he's a good spirit. So.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
what you do, let's kind of go to our conversation a little bit that we had
Sure.
at dinner the other
The
night.
one that made you come home and say, "Oh my gosh, we need to have a conversation with
Yes,
Sarah
exactly.
on camera."
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, that one. Let's go that one.
So basically, kind of going back to where I was starting here is just saying, okay, Hannah and I have a deep reverence, I'll say, for the impact that plant medicines can make on people's lives.
Right.
Now, I've gone this full gamut. I guess we both have. But when I first got into this world of utilizing plant medicine for my healing, and Hannah was doing the same, I kind of had my heels dug into the ground about if I'm going to do any kind of psychedelic, it's going to be earth-driven.
Right.
It's going to be ayahuasca, maybe psilocybin,
Right.
bufo, whatever it is. It's going to come
From
from
the
nature.
Sonoran Desert
It's
toad.
Sonoran desert
Or
toad.
plant.
Yep, it's going to come from the plant. It's going to be derived. It's going to be natural. It's going to be done ceremonially with very specific intent, with a shaman or a
Right.
taita or a
Right.
maestro or somebody.
He's a little stubborn about
And
these things.
Right.
and because I just believe, we both believe, like there has to be the healing, the difference in the way that we kind of quantify it, the difference between a drug and a medicine is, are you utilizing it to escape, or are
Right.
you utilizing it to go internal and heal?
Right. Makes
And
sense.
and so when we were talking about it the other day, I asked you a question, like, how do you reconcile
Right.
the fact that you're doing a lot of biosynthetics,
Right.
and it's not plant driven? Like, where is the spirituality in this?
Right.
Where is all this? Because to me, that's a big part of it. Like,
Right,
and
right.
doing ayahuasca for me made a huge.
Right.
It really changed or enhanced my spiritual view of the world.
Right.
And so my fear originally was, when we go the synthetic route, what does that do to the
Sure.
whole
energetics.
space,
Right.
the whole energetics behind it
Right.
all, right?
Yeah.
And so your answer was amazing. So could you talk about kind of like your perspective on why you do what you do,
Sure.
what your mission is behind it all,
Sure.
and how you think it can help humanity heal?
Sure.
Since we're talking about helping people heal, grow, and thrive.
Absolutely. So I think fundamentally, imagine when penicillin was first discovered.
Yeah.
Penicillin was discovered accidentally by somebody who ate moldy bread,
Yeah.
right? And then they realized, like, hey, if you have some sort of an infection or something, this is something that's going to heal that. Or it's
Anyone
going
who's
to
ever watched or read the Outlander series,
Right.
the book series,
Yes.
just saying that's how we learned this.
Right.
I learned this from Claire in the Outlander series. Not my biology
Very
teacher,
deep.
Right.
bless her heart.
Right.
But anyway.
So imagine if after we discovered that moldy bread heals people and it makes them feel better. Now imagine if and again, this is just a perspective, right? Imagine if we said, okay, moldy bread heals things or people, and from now on, everybody who's going to get sick is going to eat moldy bread, period. And we never evolved from that point to now where we have such complex antibiotics. So that's one perspective that I think for me really works, right? It sort of puts it into context. Now, if you apply that same thing to psychedelics, yes, nature has given us psychedelics. They're amazing. They're beautiful. But, we are taking what nature has given us and we are improving it. We're taking the moldy bread and now we are making very targeted therapeutics and therapies that have specific outcomes. In addition to being able to make what our nature has already given us more efficiently, which in my opinion actually helps nature, right? If you, for example, if a typical cannabis plant in the later stages is going to take 5 gallons of water a day for months on end, and then there's labor involved. So now think about what that does to like the total resource usage of the planet. Now, if you can make that within 5 days with like way less water and other resources and labor, I think that's helping the planet. But thinking about it along those lines now, if we take let's take a case example like mushrooms, right? So if you take mushrooms, now you have a 6 hour, 7 to 8 hour hallucination. Some people may not be okay with that, or some people may not have that amount of time, or some people may just want something that's not a microdose, that's a macrodose, but without all that because of whatever reason that they may
Or
want.
maybe the feeling of getting nauseous and having your body process it, and
Exactly,
like
the
all that.
butterflies
That might.
butterflies in your stomach or other, like, anxiety or stuff. So what we're working on actively at the moment is being able to take these natural molecules and now being able to slightly tweak them, just like we had penicillin, right? If today we have dozens of different types of antibiotics and they're very specific in their outcome. But if we, let's say, just stuck with moldy bread or just penicillin, it would not be effective at all for all sorts of infections and bacteria and other issues. So we're taking that same concept and we're applying it to not only psychedelics, cannabinoids, but other molecules where, what if we could engineer, let's say, the molecule of LSD that instead of, a 14-hour hallucination, it has a 1-hour hallucination. What if what if there's no hallucination at all? What if the effects are even better than what psilocybin or psilocin or CBD could offer? So we're not saying that that is the outcome of everything, but we're saying that let's take that initial step to learn more, to find out whether there's something out there or not. So that's sort of the goal.
Okay, and so the one thing that resonated with me in our conversation the other night was, we've both done bufo,
Yes.
from the Sonoran Desert Toad,
Yes.
and when you use bufo, it's very hard to control the dosage amount.
Right.
The burn rate changes, the way you measure it,
Right.
the excretion from the actual toad
Right.
matters,
Right.
As
Right.
far as the
Right.
the concentration or whatever of the psychedelic molecule,
Right.
right?
And we've even heard what's happening in the toad's life if they're
Yeah.
being maltreated in
Right.
the excretion, as it's happening.
Yeah.
The energy of the toad as it's having that
Right.
experience
Right.
is going to change the actual molecule that's excreted by
And
them.
so it's hard to
Yeah.
create a predictable experience because of the fact that
Right.
you have all these variables that are just
Right.
quite frankly almost virtually impossible to
Right,
control.
right.
So by creating and isolating this biochemical
Right.
5-MeO DMT molecule,
Right.
you're able to put it into a form where you can create a controlled,
Right.
predictable result, and you're helping the toads, and
Right.
you're able to give an experience.
Right.
And because of the fact that I've done both versions of it and understand the difference
Sure.
between the experiences, right,
Right.
and know what that's like, it
Right.
made sense for me.
Right.
And so, can you speak to that at all? Like,
Yeah, so one of the first images that I saw of 5-MeO extraction was a toad that was hung up, like with all four of its appendages, like the legs and arms were like hung up like this.
No way.
And that was, I don't know, I'm sure like a lot of people do it like in a nicer way. Most people probably like extract it in a nicer way, but that. So the first thing that came to my mind when I saw
horrible.
something like that is, what is this? I mean, we are embarking on a spiritual journey by torturing the very
Little
animal, and that's giving us the medicine. So that was my first thought that came to mind, right? Or for
Yeah.
example, there's many psychedelics out there that come from plants and yeast, and now people have just taken so much that those may become rare. So those were the first two thoughts that came to my mind. Like, you think the toad wants to be here? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The second part that you touched up on, which I think actually, by the way, is a great point, is every excretion or extraction of medicine is different. And this, by the way, is not only just in 5-MeO, this is across the spectrum. So one of the problems this is what I learned from the cannabis industry way back in the day, is you have a plant of cannabis, right? Just one plant. There are many buds that grow around. There's the top bud, the side bud, the bottom bud, right? Now, within the same plant, if you take the top bud and you take a bud from the bottom and you put them through, an LCMS or a GCMS, which is the instruments that do testing that tell
Okay.
you what percentage of CBD, THC is in there, within the same plant, you will find out that the top bud is up to 5%, let's say, more THC than the bottom bud. And now we're talking about the same plant. Now imagine you have 1,000 plants of the same strain.
in different crops.
Right,
and
different crops. Can you
Yeah.
imagine
Right.
how much of a nightmare that would create for standardization? And because this comes back into what you originally said, is that there has to be some sort of a standardization when we talk about, or when we do, for example, pretty much any drug. I mean, you look at antibiotics, for example. And if you have a bread that has a little bit more penicillin in it versus less, how would that affect healing, or how would that affect somebody getting better from an infection? So that carries on in pretty much anything that comes from nature. It is meant to be variable, and that's just the outcome of evolution and how genetics work. So this problem, I think, is one of the core problems in the industry, which is that one may be different from the other, and that's just if you had the natural plant or the natural toad in its natural setting. Now take that and multiply that with, let's say, unsustainable or cruel ways of extraction, right? Like with the toad being hung up, or maybe the plants are not taken care of well. That creates a whole range of possibilities. Sometimes in nature, if the animal or the plant is not taken care well of, they will create more toxins, right? So thinking about it along those lines, I think there's a place for every type of process or method of healing. It's another thing we talked about the other night,
Yeah.
right? Which is, I definitely believe there's a huge place for going the traditional method of going out into the jungle with a shaman and going through the whole spiritual process in the way that it is. But having said that, there is also a place for a more targeted approach, a more controlled approach,
Almost clinical.
In a clinical side, uh, because I think there's a place for it in terms of some people may find one effective and the other ineffective. So we have to, if we're going to talk about treating a whole population of people that have PTSD or treatment-resistant depression, which is hundreds and millions of people, probably might even be billions actually. How can one type of therapy work for everybody, and I'm just going to, or one type of ceremony work for everybody? So that, I think, is one thing. The second thing I think about, and we brought it up to dinner, is that going out to a retreat, going out to, let's say, the Amazonian jungle, is, fortunately or unfortunately, is something that a privileged or a semi-privileged person can do. Not everybody is able to spend that kind of money to be able to, or even take that many days away from work. And the third thing is, even if everybody had the money and the time to do it, there may be a saturation point. I mean, how many people can the Amazon rainforest hold?
That's true.
Or your center, for example. And by the way, lovely place, mind blown away. I'm
you.
serious. I've never seen anything like it, and the vibe and everything. But how many people can you guys really host? Like, if there's a bus,
Yeah,
few
we're
buses
limited.
of 1,000 people,
We're limited. We could
tomorrow,
take
right?
like 30 people a week times
Exactly.
52 weeks. It's like literally limited to like 1,500 people a year.
Exactly. So my idea is, or my thought about this is, like, yes, that is, in my opinion, probably the best way to do it, right? To be having that spiritual guidance, that connection, and for the people that can have the time and money and be able to do that. But while we wait for that to happen, and for all the people in the world to go through that, there are still hundreds and millions of people out there that are suffering. So the question is, do we hold on to that concept of how the medicine should be administered, and for those 10, 15 years until you have vacancy, or the next center has vacancy, do we let those people silently suffer? Or do we go this alternative way, which is to use nature itself to be able to bring down the prices, and the availability? Because in a lot of cases, it's not about prices; it's about there just isn't enough. Like, look at ibogaine, look at all these other substances.
Yeah.
And can we bring that out to the masses, so while they wait, we can still push out some healing and some wellness for the people?
So that's all amazing. I love that. And I would just add to this, just to make it really abundantly clear for everybody who's watching and listening, is that, and I know you believe this because it was involved in our conversation the other day, is the set and setting are really important, regardless of whether you're doing it in the jungle, where it's really easy. Obviously, the setting is kind of curated for you. The mindset is going to be cultivated by the group, the community, the shaman, whatever. So when you do it in the ways that we're able to create now, there just becomes a greater level of responsibility on you cultivating your own setting and your own mindset,
And
and
by
doing
you mean the
end user, the person doing it. If you're going to go through
person working with the medicine.
right, the person working through the medicine has to go through this process and make sure that the setting is proper, make sure their mindset and their intentions are right, that they're going inside. It's not being used recreationally, that their integration work, because we've done psychedelics. It's not, the journey is one thing. The life changing stuff happens through the integration on the backside of that.